today we have Lisa Campbell, CMO of OneTrust. Lisa is where she's responsible for business, industry, and marketing strategy. Lisa also serves as an independent board director at Dropbox. Prior to OneTrust, Lisa spent 18 years at Autodesk, where she served as chief marketing officer and executive vice president, business strategy, and marketing. Lisa was also chairman of the board for the Autodesk Foundation from 2017 to 2021. She holds a BA in mathematics and computer science from Boston College and an MBA from Babson College. So all Massachusetts, plenty of years in Massachusetts. Welcome, Lisa. I went to Boston University. So yes, so I also spent some time there. Boston College has an actual campus, and it's beautiful.
Right.
I saw it from the outside. But anyways, thank you, Lisa. All right, so I want to get started with, for those who have never heard of OneTrust, who are its customers and what problem are you helping them solve?
Okay, thanks. So let me just try to lay this out, hopefully as succinctly as possible. And I'm excited, by the way, just to share with you about OneTrust. I think the first thing that's important to understand is the company name, OneTrust. That means that we're all about trust. What do we mean by trust? We're talking about data privacy, data security, ethics, compliance, and sustainability. So essentially, organizations around the world, and this is big companies and small companies in every industry around the world, use OneTrust products basically to enable what we call the responsible use of data. That means we help customers protect the data privacy rights of individuals, implement and report on their cybersecurity programs, make their social impact goals a reality. We help them with things like speak up programs, right? Hotlines, some people call it whistleblower hotlines, and reporting on their ESG initiatives. We have 14,000 customers using our technology. And by the way, that's about 50% of the global 2,000 who are also using it. And again, it's around the world. If I would just add a couple other things, the key problem that these companies are trying to solve with our software is, the regulatory landscape is changing. Many of you are probably seeing every state, right, is starting to basically pass their own privacy regulations. Now, the EU has the GDPR, but we have different states with their own privacy regulations. We're seeing accountabilities for chief information security officers change, for chief ethics officers are changing. And so people need our help just to stay on top of this and make sure that they're not just being compliant, they're going beyond compliance to being a trusted company that people want to either work for, do business with, or partner with.
Thanks for that breakdown. How often do you see within your customer base companies that are in our world, Series A or seed companies? Like, where does it start, or where should people already be thinking about this in terms of their size?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I will tell you, there are a number of small seed companies or earlier stage companies that are worried about getting their SOC 2 compliance. We ran this campaign one time. I think it was like kind of SOC 2 me or something like that. But it was people like you want to get some of your baseline certifications. And so we have some tools that deal with certification automation. So you can get some of your basic certifications just to be able to do business. Because even if you're a small company, people want to know, right, that you have certain levels of governance in place and compliance in place.
And I'm guessing too, the type of customers that you have, if you're servicing enterprise level customers, I'm sure security, privacy, all those things are major. I mean, I know that is from our end, right? As we talk with enterprises.
Yeah, and Alejandro, we do from SMB, mid-market to enterprise and very large strategic customers. The beauty of this space, so we're very fortunate in this market that we're in, is that it doesn't matter what size your company is, what industry or what geo, I should say, or region that you're in. Everybody has to care about respecting data privacy, securing data, all of these kind of things, right? It's not optional.
Okay, well, that's great to know and to keep in mind. I want to jump into a bit of your journey. So you began with OneTrust 2.5 years ago. So congratulations. I don't know when officially 2.5 years. When you joined the company, how did you figure out what would be your priorities? Are there questions you ask yourself? Is there a certain playbook that you follow?
Yeah, so as many of you heard, I came from Autodesk, which is a much bigger company, and I knew that I was going to a much smaller company, right? That's a little bit, it's a private company, later stage growth, but we're still, for all intents and purposes, in some of our startup phases. And the first thing that I did when I came in, I think one of the things all leaders need to do is you need to listen. The worst thing that happens is you come in and you just assume everything that worked at my previous company is going to be the formula that works here. So the first thing I try to do is learn as much as I can about the market, learn as much as I can about our customers, what works, what resonates, what doesn't resonate. And then based on that, I take a look then, what should our marketing priorities be? So I like that framework where I not only learn from internal employees, but also from customers and partners. And we also, depending on your industry, you can learn a lot from analyst organizations as well. So I call it triangulation. I like to come in, get the lay of the land, learn as much as possible. Now, the good thing is when you've been doing things for as long as I have, right? When you've got 20, 25 years of experience, you have what I call pattern recognition. So the one thing I can do is I take my pattern recognition and say, all right, I've seen this before. Here are some of the things that I have seen in my years that work really well when you have a problem like this, and then try to say, how can I make something like that work at this company, in this environment, in this market? And quite frankly, cultures of companies are different. So I like to take all of that into account and then come up with what my priorities are.
As you look at your priorities, and I know that you are, one of your responsibilities is increasing brand awareness. What are some of the questions that you ask yourself or your team to help you figure out how to pursue that strategy of improving brand awareness for a company that you just joined in?
Right. So one thing I will share with everybody is I kind of consider myself a lifelong learner. I'm very, very curious. And so I'm also an avid reader. And the reason why I bring that up is one of the first things that we decided to do when I came to OneTrust, and by the way, why I was so excited to come to the company, was we said, we're creating a whole new category of software. And we call this new category of software a new SaaS category called Trust Intelligence Software. And I've read this book. Many of you might be familiar with it. It's called Play Bigger. And it has a framework and concepts in there about are you trying to create a new category and how do you become the leader in your category? So for some of you, you're either disrupting an existing market or you're creating an entirely new market of software, right? Or there could be another angle you're taking. So we decided we were creating a whole new category of software. So what did we do around awareness is we tried to identify what are the key business problems we're trying to solve? Who are our target personas? What are our key segments to be in? What are maybe any priority industries? And then we said, we have to get our message out to these people, and we have to do it in a way that resonates with them. So go to the trade shows that they're going to. Make sure that you're having any of your information and content displayed at the publications, the blogs, whatever it is that they go to read, because that's where they're going to get their trusted information. Bring together groups of people, maybe in webinars. So there's a bunch of different marketing tactics or venues that we can use to generate that brand awareness. I think public relations is a great vehicle to use. By the way, it's not very costly. If you have a talented PR person on your team, you can get really good, powerful content out there. You could have your blogs where you're getting thought leadership content out there. So you can have blog posts. You can have your own kind of branded hub. And that way you raise your profile of your company. Now, for those of us who can't afford to go to trade shows, I always kind of say, look, if your industry is big on trade shows, and that is something that is worthwhile to do. So in my industry, trade shows are big. Our customers go to trade shows. If you're going to go, I always say, be there. And what I mean by be there is get a big footprint, get a big booth, like invest, be careful. What is your messaging there? What are the speaking opportunities that you have there? How are you surrounding that event with ways to get one-on-one time with your customers? So really take advantage and be creative of whatever avenue you're going to, because if people see you as the biggest there, you're going to get a lot more brand awareness than if you have a small little booth in the corner.
I was just going to ask you about, out of all these different channels so far, which ones have been most successful for you? Is trade shows, you mentioned trade shows seems to be a really big one where you're placing a lot of your resources on?
Well, what I would say is I think we have a balanced approach, but I would say trade shows definitely work well for those, and the third-party sponsored trade shows. We also have our own branded event, like many of you might be thinking about, where it's our own event for our customers, where we bring them in and we have a really well curated experience for them. Webinars is a great one for us. Now, I'll caveat all of this to say, you always have to find out what is it that your personas or the people that you're addressing like to do. In my previous company, trade shows was not it. It was not how we got to people.
At Autodesk.
Going, right? Yeah, at Autodesk. So we use more digital marketing. What I use at OneTrust is a balance of in-person events as well as, digital online experiences. And we try to get a good balance because, as many of you know, trade shows are amazing. In-person events are amazing. Webinars are amazing, but that gets you to just a certain size audience, right? When you go digital and much broader, you can hit thousands and thousands of people with your message. That's why I always feel that it's good to get a balance of both.
I hadn't heard public relations. You mentioned public relations and that how strategic that has been for you. Has there been certain types of best practices or methods within public relations that have really worked out, and what would those be?
Yeah, so I think of public relations or media relations bigger than a press release, right? So, and I think anybody who's on your team who's in public relations, they always like to make sure people understand that it's much broader, right? You're understanding what are the big trends out there? What are the conversations? What is top of mind? What are people talking about? What are people writing about? And so strategically, what we can use then for PR is, you can get out meaningful press releases. And what I mean by meaningful is nobody's going to pay attention if you don't have something that's worth reading, right? So is there something big about your product? Is there something really interesting from a customer? But you can also start to participate in blogs, right? You can also get some of your customers to talk to the media. So how do you leverage some of those thought leaders to invite you into conversations? Maybe they'll let you quote in a piece that they're writing so that they kind of refer to you as an expert. So we try to leverage that. I had this one initiative last year where it was own the airwaves. And one of the things that I did with my PR team is I said, tell me all the creative things that you can do to help us own the airwaves on this conversation and this topic. So that also included working with my social team to say, how can we get into all the social conversations? And it was amazing. After one quarter, the difference in share of voice when we measured it at the beginning of the quarter to the end of the quarter was amazing to see the shift.
That's awesome. I want to jump into channel marketing. Channel marketing involves working with intermediaries, partners as a way to sell your product to your end customer. For tech founders or marketers out there who are considering partners, what are questions they should ask themselves and actions they should avoid based on your previous experiences?
Yeah, that's another one that I love because while I was at my previous company, we won many awards, channel awards, awards with VAR partners because we had this extensive channel. So the one thing I always try to say, though, is channel means many different things. So you can have distributors, you can have value-added resellers, you could have just services partners, right, who focus on education and training. You can also have GSIs, right, the global systems integrators, the big, the Accentures and the KPMGs and the Deloittes and the PwCs of the world. And so I think all of those and then technical partnerships, right, technology partnerships where you jointly market and sell together, and it's how either your products talk or integrate. I think companies should probably take a look at all of those. And then, because you can't do everything all at once, you stack, rank, and prioritize based on your market, what you think is the most important to your customers, what you think will help you get the most market share, and then go after those partnerships first. Because I will tell you, my experience is that you have to take care of those partnerships. You have to nurture them. You have to take care of them. You have to feed them. And so you'll want like a partner marketing organization. You want a partner management organization, and you want to be able to really invest in those relationships to get the return on investment. Nobody wants what I call the paper relationship, which is I put out a press release and that's the end of the relationship, right? I'm not getting return on that. So I encourage people to really take a look at partners. I think that they can be very strategic in accelerating your business, especially getting into new markets. So let's just say you want to go into a new market and you don't have an office there, you don't have employees there. A partnership can be a great way for you to get immediate experience in market with somebody who understands the market, understands the local culture, and that could be a great way to just learn and start to expand geographically.
Would that be a common, you mentioned understanding whatever partner you choose, that you gotta put in the time and you gotta put in the effort and you gotta be all in. Is that a certain mistake or a common practice that you see you've experienced in the past, where a certain partner's chosen, you give it one shot and that's it, and then you're out, like you mentioned?
Yeah, that's a great point. I would encourage patience. I think all of us in this day and age, quite frankly, we do something and we want to have instant gratification and instant return. Because let's face it, if we're spending money on this, that means we're not spending it on something else. So it's an opportunity cost. But I encourage people to be patient. Before you enter into these relationships, sit down and really think about, how long should I really give this before I understand whether it's a go, no go? Is it 6 months? Is it 9 months? Is it a year? So kind of get that mindset up front first. And that way, I think you'll know how much time to let it go by before you say, you know what, this is not worth my effort, or this is amazing, I should actually expand what I'm doing here.
I love that you've mentioned a number of times really understanding your customer journey and your customer, period, right? What are they reading? What are they looking at? Where are they spending their time? All those things. When it comes to that customer experience and understanding every touch point that makes up that customer journey, what has been the most effective methods for creating a great relationship with your customer?
Yeah, and I love that you're referring to it also as a customer journey, because we all know that the journey, and there's so many different journey funnels, but I think it's worth every company just sitting down, and most journeys I've seen usually have about 6 steps in them, right? Somehow you're going from awareness to consideration through buying and onboarding, adoption, it depends on what your business is.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that is really important. For anybody who's a marketer, I will tell you, here's the advice I give to my marketers. No marketing in a bubble. And here's what I mean by marketing in a bubble. You can't learn about your customers by talking to everybody else who's talking to the customer. Yes, it's a way to get input, but I say to them, you talk to the customer. So go to customer advisory boards, go to trade shows and talk directly to customers, go to the associations that your customers sign up to and are participants in. Try to get face-to-face interactions and learn from them. I have found, like I had this one marketer say, I'm nervous, I don't know what to do. And I said, you know what? Go and ask them, what keeps you up at night? What are the things that you're most worried about? And believe me, they will start talking and they will share with you and you will learn so much. So I always encourage marketers, know your customer and try as best as possible to get face-to-face. I've even said, call a sales rep and say, do you mind if I just listen in on the conversation? I won't say anything, but I'll just listen in on the conversation. Because, a lot of calls today are virtual. So that's one thing about knowing your customer and getting a better relationship. The other key thing for me, we can collect from customers now their preferences. How many of you, when we go to a website, they always say, fill out your preferences. Do you want to get an email? Do you want to get subscription to the blog post? Customers will tell you how they want to be communicated to and what they're interested in. So collect that consent and preference and then leverage it, because that's the way you're actually communicating to them about what they care about and in the vehicle that they care to use. And I find a lot of times people don't do that. they have that precious information. I kind of call it, sometimes it's first party information, and we don't leverage it to say, how can I use this to personalize my interaction to get that deeper relationship?
What, when it comes to tech startups that they want to personalize that customer experience, and how do they go about doing that without, and this is very relevant to OneTrust, but without crossing into privacy concerns?
Yeah, so this one is near and dear to my heart. It's funny. I was sharing with a friend the other day. I said, I know more than I ever wanted to know about GDPR and some of these other things. And I kind of said it tongue in cheek. You know, one of the first things I did, I went and got 2 certifications in privacy. And it felt like I was back in college. I had to literally study for 40 hours for each one of those. That test is not easy. And I share that because I have a much greater appreciation as a CMO than ever before about respecting people's data and their privacy. So here's what I mean by that. Anybody, but marketers in particular, right? Any data that we expect to get from a customer, if we want them to give us their first party data, because we all know third party cookies being deprecated, so first party data is where the gold is. I will give you my data if you give me value in return. I call this the virtuous cycle. So I'll give you data. I'll see if I can trust you with it. Are you going to use it for the purpose intended? So why are you collecting my data? How are you going to use my data? And do I get value from you in return? If I do, and you do all of those things, I'm willing to give you more information. And then I'll give you more value. That's, by the way, how you can differentiate from your competition. Because I will tell you, there is a race right now for getting first party data. Because when you get that first party data, you can get closer and closer to your customers. And respecting privacy is absolutely critical. Personal data, sensitive data. And one of the things I will say, and we all know this, trust can be broken in one interaction. So I always tell my team, every interaction does one of 2 things, right? I either build trust or break trust. And all you need is one customer to go on social media and say something about they couldn't trust you with their data, you misused their data, you did something. That is a very deep hole to climb out of. I also manage crisis communications, so I've lived the journey on this. So respecting privacy is important, and collecting the data in a trusted manner and in a way where you really live up to the purpose of why you collected it will build so much trust from your customers.
You mentioned finding the best way, and you say for marketers, but I feel like not just marketers, but including founders, CEOs, talk with your customer, right? Don't assume, don't hear what your colleague said. Don't just have the chance to talk with as many customers as possible to hear from them how their experience is. So you described, I have a question regarding digital marketing, and yes, it's a very competitive landscape. And, you know, what are some of the best practices that stand out and capture the attention of your target audience? You'd mentioned that trade shows it sounds like that's where it's at for you. I'm curious, what questions do you ask yourself when you decide to go all in on a trade show? For any founder out there that's thinking of participating in the next conference and that next trade show, and they're debating whether they should go all in or not, what are some things that they should keep in mind?
Yeah, that's another good one, because look, all of us are looking at our budgets and we're trying to say, how do I get the highest return on every dollar I spend? Because it's always opportunity cost. So what I like to do is, first thing is, who's the persona, right, that we are targeting and selling, and are they going to be the right personas at the show? So the first thing I like to look at is, who goes to these shows? What are their titles? What are they responsible for? Because you really got to make sure, just because somebody puts on their website that these are the type of people who go, that does not mean that those are the type of people who go. So you really got to do your due diligence and make sure that it's the right people with the right titles that have the right influence or buying power. Or
how do you do that? Is that like referrals, in the sense of trying to find someone else that that had been to that show before?
Yeah, I think in general, people like to help each other out. And You can sometimes you can talk to Gartner or Forrester or IDC, right? And they'll know about the show. Sometimes you talk to, I'm in software. So software is a very close-knit community, right? As we all know, and you can talk to people, friends of yours, and say, hey, you used to go to the show. What did you see? Was it a high quality conference? Or sometimes maybe you go the first time and you send people just to scout it out. So I've done this too. Before I go in all big, because it can cost a lot of money, I'll maybe buy some entrance tickets for people. And I say, your job is to go scout it out and go talk to people on the floor, go learn and see, is this worth our time there? Will this have the right audience? Is it well attended? Is the content good? And once you kind of do that due diligence, then and then, by the way, some of our industries, there's so many conferences where like, I can't go to all 20 of these.
Right.
Choose. So what I like to do is go through and basically say, based on attendance rates, you can always look up and see what did people say about conferences, positive or negative, like all of this is what I call triangulation. And then I'll usually end up and say, these are the top, we call them tier 1. So I have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 shows that I'll do. And based on that, I know what level of investment I want to give. So I think that could be a helpful framework for everybody when you're trying to decide, am I going to go and how big do I want to be while I'm there?
Do you have you mentioned webinars when I was just thinking of other digital channels. Has that been fairly big for you? What has your experience been, whether it's webinar, whether it's like podcasts? I don't know if the company does internal podcasts or external.
Yeah, so webinars in our market tend to perform pretty well. Like, here's an example. A new regulation passes, say the state of Connecticut now has a new, privacy law or regulation that's coming. We host a webinar on that. I'll get standing room only. So again, your topics have to be timely and they have to be interesting because let's face it, people have webinar fatigue. I see that. Because all of us get invited to so many webinars and you have to really make sure that it's timely, it's relevant, and that your speakers are interesting. Get people in there that everybody wants to hear from, that has a respected voice in that particular area. That works really well. And of course, like I said, we augment with digital and other pieces as well. And I think you asked me about one other piece. You said, oh, blogs. So I always encourage my team to be creative. And so one of the things that we did is we've just created this new podcast. For any of you who are interested, it's called Trustonomy. And we are getting just great readers. People are listening. They are going. And what I always look at is we've put out 3. And how many repeat visitors, how many new ones are we getting? And this is our own branded content. But what it is it's storytelling. So it's interesting because nobody just wants to read about privacy, the law. But if I tell you an interesting story about something that happened 100 years ago and how the outcome would have changed, then that's a pretty interesting thing. And so you can learn and it's interesting. There's storytelling and there's a narrative.
That's great. Awesome. I want to thank you again, Lisa, for your time and sharing your journey and insights with us.
Thank you.